this lecture, I will discuss whether and how research evaluation can be done quantitatively to reduce the subjectivity as well as potential bias and arbitrariness inherent in purely qualitative methods. In recent years, there has been a rash of proposals which led to a new field called bibliometrics. Bibliometrics has the goal of introducing a metric system to support quantitative analysis of research by focusing on publications. It is already widely used and misused and has generated heated controversies. A metric applied to measure a set of subjects leads to a ranking, which may then drive decisions. I will introduce the main metrics, I will critically evaluate them, and I will discuss their possible uses and misuses. The proposed metric system for research quality starts from the definition of a metric for quality of a scientific paper. Quality is intended as the impact exerted by the paper, and it is measured by the number of citations received. Citations, however, are only a proxy for impact of a research paper. There are many reasons why the plain number of citations is not a robust quality metric. First, it is sensitive to the time elapsed since publication. For example, how can you compare the number of citations of a 2-year-old paper and a 20-year-old paper? Today's citation count may grow tomorrow. In addition, there may be an inertia in the number of citations. Even an influential paper may have a small number of citations 1 or 2 years after its publication, and the number may grow tremendously afterwards. Second, the number of citations includes self-citations. It is possible to exclude self-reference publications from the count, but how about the unethical game played by groups who cite each other with the sole aim to increase citation counts? These are just examples to show that the number of citations is a rather poor indicator. Even assuming that the problems we just mentioned are eliminated, an even more fundamental question is, can we trust the number of citations as a viable metric to capture the notion of impact? That would presuppose a highly rational, uniform, and systematic model of reference giving. But unfortunately, this is not true. First, it has been observed that citation practices differ quite substantially among disciplines. Thus, citation counts cannot be used to compare research impact of contributions in different areas. Second, citations can have different purposes other than showing intellectual dependency on the cited. Very often, they are just a way to carry out a scientific conversation. A reference may be included in a paper to show that the topic is also of interest to someone else, or to prove that the author knows the literature. Sometimes, the cited paper explains the result, not necessarily of the cited author. Sometimes, the cited paper is an exemplar of another approach, different from the one presented in the citing paper. Sometimes, a citation may even express a negative credit. In conclusion, the use and meaning of citations is very subjective, which means that simply counting them cannot be an objective indicator of impact for individual research papers. The number of citations is often used to build other metrics whose intended use is to provide a quantitative assessment of other characteristics. For example, in earlier lectures, I mentioned that many journals and conferences exist with different levels of scientific reputation. I also mentioned that different research communities have their reference journal and conferences, and to a large extent, communities share a consensus about the reputability of their venues. Reputation of a journal or conference depends on the impact exerted by its published contributions. Can a metric capture this concept in an objective manner. The notion of impact factor has been introduced to answer this question. Let us consider the case of a journal. Its impact factor is defined as a yearly average number of citations to articles published in that journal. Precisely, in any given year, the impact factor of a journal is the number of citations received in that year of articles published in that journal during the preceding years, divided by the total number of articles published in that journal during the 2 preceding years. Variations of this metric also exist. For example, instead of only considering 2 years, a 5-year impact factor considers a period of 5 years. The notion of impact factor can also be applied to conferences. Does the impact factor capture the notion of reputation of a journal or conference? Although in this case the count of citations is precisely scoped within time frames, the problem of using citations as proxies for impact is still there. In addition, it has been observed that citation counts have highly skewed distributions, which makes the use of the mean number of citations potentially misleading. Comparing impact factors across scientific areas is also problematic. For example, you can see in this diagram that the average citations per article in life sciences is much higher than in mathematics or computer science. The metric is also easy to tweak by unfair editorial policies that encourage authors of accepted papers to add more citations to papers in the same journal or conference. Finally, the metric is open to potential misuse. Whenever one has to evaluate a paper, one may be tempted to give it a value that depends on the impact factor of the venue in which it appears. Likewise, papers may be ranked based on the ranking of the impact factors of the venues in which they appeared instead of their quality. Let us consider 2 papers, PA and PB, which appeared in 2 venues A and B, where A has higher impact factor than B. It may happen that paper PA has never been cited by others and has very low significance, while paper PB is very highly cited and has been very influential. A metric called HIndex has also been introduced to evaluate researchers. The goal of this metric is to measure, with a single number, both the productivity and citation impact of a researcher. The metric has been suggested in 2005 by Jorge Hirsch, a physicist at UCSD, as a tool for determining theoretical physicists' relative quality. It was called Hirsch Index, abbreviated as HIndex. It is defined as the maximum value of H such that the given author has published H papers that have each been cited at least H times. If we plot papers by decreasing number of citations, computation of the H-index is shown in this figure. Most of the criticisms we raised earlier apply here too, because of the controversial underlying assumption that citation counts are a good proxy for impact of a scientific paper. Before ending this lecture, I would like to mention that approaches exist to evaluate and rank institutions in research and higher education at all levels. Specific programs, departments, schools, or even entire colleges and universities. In these cases, evaluation often goes beyond just research excellence. Rather, it considers also a variety of other factors, ranging from funding and endowment, specialization expertise, admissions, student options, award numbers, internationalization, graduate employment, industrial linkage, historical reputation, and other criteria. Evaluation can be performed by specialized magazines and newspapers, websites, governments, or academics. There are heated debates about usefulness and accuracy of these rankings, as well as a lack of consensus on which factors should be considered to produce the ranking. Despite these deficiencies and serious concerns, these rankings raise a lot of public attention, and institutions increasingly pay attention to them.